Okay, folks, welcome back to Battle for Azeroth. Wanted to do a state of for Frost Death Knight. I've been doing quite a bit of PvP, so that's what this is going to focus on. A little more is the PvP side of things. Got the hidden artifact appearance for Frost. That'd be the green blades, kind of in the background there. So I've been doing PvP to unlock the first appearance, and felt I had played enough to give my thoughts on it. Frost is probably the spec I've played the least. It's usually the go-to for DPS on Death Knights. I've just always played Blood for whatever reason. That's the spec I prefer. Played a little bit of Holy. I haven't played too much with Holy. I think Holy was the first DPS spec. Well, yes, it was the first DPS spec I played when I first unlocked Death Knight. So Frost has had a lot of changes, as has all the specs with Death Knight. Since the video for Unholy was an hour long, going to try to keep this one shorter. If we look through the spell book, we got Death's Advance. I believe, if memory serves, all three specs got this. For 8 seconds, your movement speed is increased by 30%. You cannot be slowed below 100% of normal speed, and you are immune to force movement effects and knockbacks. Passive ability, you cannot be slowed below 70% of normal speed. So, not too bad. Good in PvP. Kind of a weird ability. Depending, there's not too many abilities with a built-in passive. So, yeah, not bad. Not good necessarily, just kind of here. It's just kind of a utility ability. So works well in PvP if you have a lot of dots on you, I've noticed. I've used it. I forget I have it because it's new. I think they added it, I want to say, like somewhere between end of Legion and beginning of Battle for Azeroth, I want to say. Somewhere in there roughly. If I'm off, I'm not off by much. So, Corpse Explosion, or Exploder, I should say, is now a baseline ability. This used to be a glyph, and then before it was a glyph, I believe it always was a glyph in one form or another, if I'm not mistaken. Way back when, it might have been a baseline ability as it is now, or a talent or something to that effect. Pretty sure it was a glyph, though, for the most part. I do remember having the actual glyph when we had major and minor glyphs, and then it was just just kind of a vanity ability, kind of very similar to the Paladin's contemplation glyph. Doesn't really do anything. It just will make a corpse explode into gore, basically. So, and that is pretty much it. So, the current, as far as changes go, I will preference it by saying a lot of the changes we have been from the end of Warlords on. So, I know, I want to say that's when we got Remorseless Winter. Seems like we've had Obliterate. Frost, I want to say, has had Howling Blast. This may be a newer ability, though. It seems like they had this back in the day. I could be mistaken. Of course, Death Strike and then Frost Strike. So, not too complicated, fairly simple. Rotation. Yeah. So I know Wrathwalk was from, I believe it was like the pre-patch for Legion, when they made a bunch of changes to everything. So that's what my talents look like. This is, as I said, been playing more PvP, so this is what I'm going to call more of a PvP build. So I took Cold Heart. It reminded me, it allows your Chains of Ice to do frost damage. So it reminded me of the glyph that you could use with Chains of Ice back in the day. So now that all the runes are changed, for those that don't know, you used to have 2 Blood, 2 Frost, and 2 Unholy runes, and then your abilities would use a combination of one or both of those. They changed all that. I'm not specifically sure when they changed it. It's a more recent change, I'll say, in the last expansion or two. To be that each spec has its respective runes. So Frost has 6 Frost runes now. So you really don't have to worry too much about rune and runic power management like you used to. You mainly just want to focus on regenerating your runes and you'll be fine for the most part. So you'll see a little bit of that as we work through these. So I said that to say Chains of Ice only requires 1 rune. So I've been spamming this, or this is spammable. So being able to, you can see it up top there, being able to do damage. This does have to cycle up to 20. So it's not ideal. It is an improvement. I have been doing fairly decent DPS. I've been at the top end of most of the games I've played, which is unusual for me. I'm not the biggest fan of melee DPS, as I've mentioned. So I was a little apprehensive playing as Frost, especially being a spec. I haven't played it that often. And for the most part, as long as you have a healer, it's not too bad. Just one healer, just as long as you're getting some kind of heal. Unfortunately, Death Strike does not heal you enough to be self-sustaining. It's never worked as well as it has in Blood. And more to that effect, you're not getting the mastery effect, you're not getting the heal and then the shield. So it's nice to have when you can use it, when it procs. I think I passed it, didn't I? Yeah. When you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor, your next Death Strike within 20 seconds is free and heals you for an additional 10% of maximum health. That's not too bad. To use it just on its own as like part of your rotation, I've tried, it just doesn't, I just don't think it works that well to really waste the runic power on it. You'd be better off using Frost Strike or I guess those are the only 2 that use runic power. Yeah. So also depends kind of where your health is as well. So you usually don't have, obviously in PvP, you usually don't have too many opportunities for people just to stand around and let you do damage to them. So you don't have too many opportunities to use a melee ability like that. A lot of your damage will come from Howling Blast, Frost Fever will spread to additional targets from the main target. So that's mainly where your DPS will come from. I have no illusions about that. The other thing with Frost, the reason I never played it that much was a lot of its gameplay revolves around using Pillar of Frost, which increases your strength. With the introduction of Remorseless Winter, which I believe is... No, which one was it? It will freeze targets. No. No. Seems like I can never find things again after no. It will freeze targets that deals 5 times as a... Yeah, there we go. I didn't read the whole thing. After Remorseless Winter deals damage 5 times to a target, they are stunned for 4 seconds. However, Remorseless Winter's cooldown is increased by 25 seconds, and the duration is reduced. The radius is reduced by 5 yards. So, it used to be tied to Pillar of Frost, as I remember. You used to have Pillar of Frost active, and then this would do its whole thing. So it's not too bad. That's kind of, you kind of go back and forth between spamming Howling Blast / using Chains of Ice and keeping Pillar of Frost on cooldown along with Remorseless Winter. I try to use them together. Doesn't always work, of course, depending on the map that you're on. When you can use these together, though, they work extremely well. If you have a healer healing you and you're able to kind of run through your rotation, pop all your cooldowns as it is. As I said, you will. I've been doing more top tier DPS, so been both fairly surprised and pleased. So, yeah. So, Cold Heart for the effect on Chains of Ice. Murderous Efficiency, consuming a Killing Machine effect, has a 50% chance to grant you one rune. So, Killing Machine is one of the older passive abilities. Your auto attack critical strikes have a chance to make your next Obliterate automatically critical strike. That's kind of a big thing I've noticed with the way I have everything, or maybe it's the way the playstyle is set up now, is a lot revolves around using your Killing Machine procs, and I believe yeah, well, Pillar of Frost is active, Frost Strike and Howling Blast always grant you Killing Machine and have a 30% chance to grant you a rune. So, as I said, when your Pillar of Frost or Remorseless Winter are on cooldown, if you're not spamming Howling Blast, you want to use that proc Howling Blast. Has a proc as well. Wanted to make sure. Right, was that it? So Obliterate has a 45% chance to cause your next Howling Blast to consume no runes and deal 300% additional damage. That's the proc I was looking for. Rhyme. I think it's Rhyme. So between the procs and everything, it's not too bad. You really don't use, I think this is the spec of the 3. I've played all 3 somewhat recently, and I think this one probably uses the least amount of runic power. So, not too bad. If you notice, notice as we go through here, the synergy of the Killing Machine. effect. Blinding Sleet. Now, this was a weird tier. This was kind of the only one I didn't know what to pick. Blinding Sleet. Targets in a cone in front of you are blinded, causing them to wander disoriented for 5 seconds. Damage may cancel this effect. It's not a great ability. It does have its moments depending on the battleground. Battlegrounds where you have, say, like Seething Shore or like Eye of the Storm, maps where you're going to have like little skirmishes, it works. It has a purpose. If nothing else, just to kind of disorient and interrupt. People are obviously jumping around, moving around, things like that. It will stop it will stop the opposing team cold. No pun intended. So it's, yeah. It sounds great in theory. You think, well, Asphyxiate is, well, yeah, but Asphyxiate only works on one target and it has a 45-second cooldown. I've already got Chains of Ice. It sounds good in theory to have a bunch of single target kind of CCs and kind of group CCs. You think, oh, that would be great. You can just sit there and pop all that and keep them like perma-stunned, and it doesn't really work well that way oftentimes. So if you notice, a lot of times when you are in a battleground and it feels like you are getting perma-stunned, you are getting perma-stunned by 2 or 3 players. It's not all just one player laying into you. So Death's Reach, I could see the advantage on. I do find myself using Death Grip more as Frost. Not necessarily enough to take a talent for it. Asphyxiate is good. I've already got something to CC, and I can spam this. This has a 45-second cooldown. That's why I said Blinding Sleet's not great, but you do have some kind of group kind of CC. You do have something that will do group, will interrupt a group. So, in some small way, I can contribute to whatever we're trying to do, whether we're trying to capture a base or a flag or what have you. So, yeah. Avalanche, casting Howling Blast with Rhyme. Active causes jagged icicles to fall on enemies nearby your target, dealing X amount of frost damage. So, I've used frost scythes, yes. This is one of the newer abilities that came out in Warlords. It only affects targets in front of you. It's a sweeping attack, so it's basically like a cone. Frozen Pulse. Well, you have fewer than 3 full runes. Avalanche seemed better because I kind of know when I'm triggering it. I can't always be assured that I'm going to have fewer than 3 full runes. It seems like an obvious thing if you are... was trying to think how to say this. If you are guarding a base, there is a very good chance you can trigger Rhyme. There's no guarantee I'm going to have fewer than 3 runes. You don't do well in one-on-one matches, or I haven't been doing well in one-on-one matches. I I can hold my own. I take a lot of damage without a healer. It's a bit strange considering that Death Knight is a plate-wearing class. So Avalanche just seemed like it made a little more sense. Frozen Pulse does less damage. There's a lot of abilities. There's a mage ability that does something vaguely similar. And I noticed a lot of the lower damage abilities just aren't worth it with the stats change. So Avalanche, while it's still kind of a chance, I know I'm going to be using Obliterate, which has a chance to trigger Rhyme, which will trigger this. So everything, the synergy, everything's kind of, the damage is stacking. So Wrathwalk, I actually took Permafrost to begin with. Your auto attack damage grant you an absorbent shield equal to 40% of the damage dealt. Again, trying to, in some vague way, recreate kind of the death, blood kind of Death Strike mastery effect, and this just really just didn't work at all in PvP. Very little benefit at all from what I could tell. And I got so used to using Wrathwalk, even though it frees you from root effects. Most people use it, I think, for the movement, the speed increase that it gives you, the movement ability. So I kept finding myself going to use it and it wasn't there. So just out of default, I went back to this. Permafrost just really wasn't working anyway. So Death Pack that heals you, and then I believe it absorbs incoming healing. So I don't like abilities that absorb incoming healing, especially in PvP. You don't know what somebody else's cooldowns are going to be. You don't know what classes you're going to be up against. So there's just a lot of variables with this. So Wrathwalk works fine. Wrathwalk works absolutely fine. Especially just doing random groups as I'm leveling. You don't know if you're going to have a tank or not. So on flag maps, if need be, or just what have you, I can, little movement speed increase is rarely a bad thing in general, let alone in PvP. Gathering Storm, each rune spent during Remorseless Winter increases damage by 10% and extends the duration by 0.05 seconds. So not too bad. Again, used Glacial Advance, another ability added in Warlords. It just goes literally just straight forward. So to me, I'm just trying for simplicity's sake. I could see if you wanted another... if you wanted something to replace Death Strike, or if you wanted just wanted something else with a little more kind of an AoE damage, it would probably work fine. With it only affecting what's directly straight ahead of you, it just, like I said, I've tried using it. I just didn't care for it when it first came out. Frostworm's Fury. Summons a Frostworm who breathes on all enemies within 40 yards in front of you, dealing X amount of frost damage and slowing their movement speed. I have rarely seen any Death Knight take this. So I'm thinking, and there for a while you kind of did. You saw it quite frequently. Again, Gathering Storm focuses on rune. Every rune spent. I try to keep a Merciless Winter up. Next to Howling Blast, this is probably where most of your DPS is going to come from. Even if you don't have Pillar of Frost up, Remorseless Winter still does a decent amount. It just doesn't last that long. It only lasts for 8 seconds. So using Gathering Storm also kind of counteracts Dead of Winter, which reduces the, I thought it said it increases the cooldown. That's what it was. It increases cooldown and its radius is reduced. So the radius is still reduced and the cooldown is still extended, but you're keeping it up longer. You're increasing the damage and extending the duration. So in a weird way, it kind of balances out. I had something else here and I don't remember what it was. Oh, yes, I do. I think. Yeah, I think that was it. So, yeah, again, kind of a weird. This had a 3-minute cooldown. I tend to be hesitant to take things with longer cooldowns in PvP, so Gathering Storm works fine. You know, this is a 3-minute. What? That's 45 seconds, and that is 20 seconds. So I can use these multiple times, and it takes this one ability to come off cooldown. So. Yeah, and this is reducing movement speed anyway, so kind of doing the same thing. This row, I would say some of these I kind of looked at them twice and just kind of guessed in, you know, made a educated guess since I don't play Frost that often. So. And Obliteration. While Pillar of Frost is active, Frost Strike and Howling Blast always grant Killing Machine and have a 30% chance to grant a rune. So, again, saw a lot of people taking Breath of Cindergosa. Not too bad. I could see this working. As I said, you really don't use Runic Power too much. You only have these two abilities, Death Strike and Frost Strike. I've tried Ice Cap. There's a few abilities on different classes that reduce something by like 1 second, and I've tried them, and they're just not worth it, in my opinion. The talent can be, you know, you can pick a better talent generally. So yeah, it works with Pillar of Frost. Interacts again, as I said, with the Killing Machine. It just seemed like, again, kind of educated guess. This one was a little less of an educated guess and just kind of like process of elimination. So I've tried Breath of Cindergosa very, very briefly. I played around with it, I think, last expansion. And it works well. It's just, it's a little weird having a channeled ability that uses a resource you have to build up. A lot of the channeled abilities I've used mostly have been like on my monk or on my warlock, and they use a resource that you regenerate. So it was just a bit of a strange concept for me, and it didn't really it only affects enemies in a cone, so it wasn't and if you move with it being a channeled ability, it stops the ability, so the cooldown kicks in. So just a bit of a weird ability for me. Seen a lot of Death Knights take this at different times. Not so much now. I think that's one of the things I've noticed is I'm not seeing a lot of the same abilities now. Actually seeing a lot of Blood Death Knights in PvP, which is strange. You generally don't see tank classes unless it's like Warrior or Demon Hunter now or something like that. Usually you'd see Frost or Unholy. So, yeah. As far as PvP talents go, Heartstop Aura decreases the cooldown recovery rate of abilities by 30% to all enemies within 8 yards. Neurotic Aura. All enemies within 8 yards take 8% increased magical damage. So this works really well with Howling Blast. And then Dead of Winter. I'm thinking I had Delirium, which your Howling Blast and Frost Strike now apply Delirium to the targeted disease that debilitates the target's movement, reducing the cooldown recovery rate of movement in chanting abilities by 25%, stacking up 2 times. Maybe was it that one? I think it was that one. Because I didn't have yeah, I think it was that one, and I swapped it out for Dead of Winter. After your Remorseless Winter deals damage 5 times to the target, they are stunned for 4 seconds. However, your Remorseless Winter's cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds, and each radius is reduced by 5. Now, of course, they don't always, as I said, they don't always stand there and let you do damage to them. So if this doesn't kick in, the effect doesn't. It's very rare I get the longer cooldown. So there just weren't too many. There just weren't too many kind of viable options in here. So yeah, I don't like how they've done some of the PvP talents on some characters. So the older, well, now it's the older system we had in Legion, I much more preferred, even if it was somewhat overcomplicated on some classes. I understand it's difficult to come up with PvE talents and PvP talents. However, it was nicer on some classes. You had more customization. There we go. I will learn to talk. So there you go, folks. There is the state of for Frost Death Knight. Hope you found that helpful. Hope you enjoyed that, and thank you for watching.